Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you here. We are in Indianapolis at the convention center. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see, I don't know, a ceiling behind us, a really cool pointy wall.
I joked that it looks like we're in the severance offices currently with the white walls and the lights. So maybe we're there.
It's hard to tell when you're here and you've been here all day. So in Indy, and today was Andrew Berry Day. These first 2 days are really heavy on coaches and GMs. Actually, most of the coaches and GMs went today. There'll be, I think, 4 tomorrow, including Todd Monken. So we'll be back here tomorrow to talk to him. But it's coaches, it's GMs, and today, Mary Kay, it was Andrew Berry. We talked to him at the podium, then we did a little cider with him off in a corner. And look, it was very typical Andrew. He didn't say a ton. He didn't reveal a ton. But of course, quarterback was very important in all of this and what he's thinking with Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and maybe what some of his other options might be.
Right. And we don't have any real definitive answers on what's going to happen at quarterback, but we picked up a few little nuggets along the way. And the first thing is that they're still in a situation where Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson would be the two main competitors for the starting job if training camp started tomorrow. But Andrew Berry reiterated that he's going to continue to look for external options. Now, I reported the other day that Malik Willis is on the radar. Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, is on the radar. But it's not just those two. There are other guys that they will look at. Now, will they actually pull the trigger and be able to land somebody that they think can be their starter and is better than Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders? That remains to be seen. I think it might be a little hard to get their hands on Malik Willis. He's going to cost a pretty penny, as much as $25, $30 million a year. And other teams will be vying for his services, including teams like the Miami Dolphins. So not sure they can make that happen, but they will look. And Andrew also said 2 other things of note that I thought were pretty important. Number one is the fact that he will listen to offers for his quarterbacks, and also that he is not scared of another open quarterback competition in training camp. So anything can happen.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think that was sort of the point of all this, that last phrase there, Ashley. Anything can happen. And, I wouldn't expect him to stand up there and pound the table for Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson. I'm really curious about what Todd Monken is going to say about all this, because I think there's a chance that he might be more forthcoming about both of them. But I think this just sort of reiterates this idea of nothing is a given with those two. And all of this is going to come down to, how does drafting Ty Simpson compare to, well, let's see what we have in the building. How does signing Malik Willis compare to, let's see what we have in the building? And if the answer is, yeah, Malik Willis, yeah, Ty Simpson, that's where Andrew Berry's going to go.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're looking at a reality where they're going to add to this room, obviously, in some capacity. They have to. And look, Andrew was Andrew today, and he wouldn't even rule out Dylan Gabriel, right? I think we've talked about this. I think Dylan Gabriel starting would be just very unlikely at this point. But look, I don't know if they'd like him as a backup or something. Who knows? That is just, I think, the mantra when it comes to the Browns and quarterbacks, especially at this time of year. And Andrew made reference to the time of year multiple times throughout his availability today as well. It's early. We know with the CBA rules, these guys are a while away from even getting on the field with their players. So it's going to make that evaluation so much harder with the internal guys, even because Todd Monken, it's not like he's out there coaching them up or even talking football with them at this stage.
Yeah, they don't even get on, so they can start the offseason program early April. They get a 2-week head start because of the new head coach. They aren't even really allowed to get on the field in earnest until after rookie minicamp, which is in May. They can do they will have a minicamp, a veteran minicamp that's voluntary. They get an extra one of those, but they don't really get to do any real field work for the most part until OTAs in the middle of May. That's when they get to do some extended stuff. So I think the point Andrew made in a number of situations, but really with this quarterback thing, is it's just too early. It's too early to know exactly what this room's going to look like.
It really is. And I'm very curious to see what Todd Monken is going to have to say about it tomorrow, because he is generally pretty forthcoming when he answers questions. And so I kind of can't wait to hear what he has to say when we specifically ask him, what do you think of Shedeur? What do you think of Deshaun? Do you really feel like you need to look outside the building, or do you feel like you can maybe march forward with what you have right now? So very curious to see where he's going to go with all of that. But I'll tell you what, April 6th, when they can reconvene for the offseason program and actually talk to coaches at some point during the offseason program, that's coming at us very quickly. And, that's just whatever, 5 weeks away or something like that. And so it's almost time for some football. And it's definitely time for Shedeur Sanders to step up, to figure out this playbook when he gets it in his hands, and to prove to these guys that he can be their starter.
Yeah, and actually, that's a point that Mary Kay has been making on this pod for a little while. Is maybe part of the math of not just coming out and saying, "Yeah, sure, we want to see what we have in you," is stay in that playbook, learn this offense. Don't take anything for granted. We want you to keep working, keep acting like you need to earn this job every day. There's probably a method to the madness here if they do just end up going with Shedeur.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the method when you have a young quarterback, period. And, Andrew talked a little bit about this today in like a very different context, but this idea of sometimes when players get in the NFL and it's the first time they are facing like major adversity, like whether it's injuries, but you can extend that out to other things, right? Like for Shedeur, it was the first time he wasn't a starter. I mean, the same as Dylan Gabriel last year. Like it's a totally different I think, approach to the job when you feel like you're fighting for it week in and week out or fighting for it in the offseason versus just saying, oh, yeah, this guy's our starter, even though we only have a 7-game sample size with him. And we don't know what this room is going to look like yet. I think it would be shortchanging everyone at this stage.
Okay, so I'll ask this, and this is weird after he basically didn't say anything, but I'm just wondering, Mary Kay, did your opinion change from Tuesday morning to after we heard Andrew Berry talk about what you think might happen at the quarterback position?
I don't think it really did. I don't think it really did. And I think that's in part because I don't know if they're going to be able to get their hands on Malik Willis. If I thought they could do that, then I would think that they probably have a brand new starter for 2026. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to make that happen. And I don't know what the other options are unless they have something up their sleeve that we really just haven't thought about yet. And that could be a trade situation because there might be someone available that we just really aren't thinking about. We didn't think Kenny Pickett was showing up on the doorstep last year. So really, at this point, I still feel like it's going to be Deshaun and Shedeur, but free agency begins in 2 weeks. It begins in 2 weeks, and so does the trade market. And within 3 weeks, we're going to have a pretty good idea of whether or not one of those two guys is still going to be the starter.
Yeah, and I think this isn't a big change. I've always thought this was possible, but I guess I came away, Ashley, feeling a little more open to the idea that the starting quarterback isn't in the building right now. Again, it's not that I didn't feel that way, but I just walked away feeling a little more open to the idea that if the right thing materializes, again, maybe that could be in the draft in 2 months, or it could be in free agency in 2 weeks. But if the right thing materializes, I guess I'm just a little more open to that idea now.
Yeah, I think almost like for me, both things can be true because I think with how this room is built right now, Shedeur Sanders, it would seem like, has the leg up to the starting job, right? For a handful of reasons. He was the starter to finish out the year last year. Deshaun Watson's coming off an injury, and you don't really know. It just seems like from everything we've seen and know, he has that advantage over Dylan Gabriel as well. And that's the room. But that room's gonna probably change. And we've also touched on this a lot the last few weeks, this idea of there's probably going to be a player out there that no one is thinking about right now. And it's not just from a Brown standpoint. Daniel Jones, I think, was this guy last year. No one's talking about him as a guy who can go somewhere else and make a real difference. And that guy's going to be out there, I think, even though people aren't talking about him yet. And the Browns, I think, to make this successful, are going to have to identify him. It's easier said than done, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, somebody's going to sign or get traded somewhere and it's going to get laughed at on Twitter. And then that guy's going to be like the 5th best quarterback in the league by week 4 or something like that. I want to get into some other Andrew topics, but let's keep talking a little Todd Monken because I mentioned this to someone earlier, Mary Kay. This is the first time probably in like 6 years that I'm kind of looking forward to the coaches' combine press conference because Todd is a guy who is going to say kind of whatever he wants. We saw him send that message very clearly. And I think that message was intended for us. I think it was intended for Jim. I think I'm talking about the, I don't block Jim Schwartz message in his introductory press conference. I think that was intended for Andrew and Jimmy and JW sitting in the front row at that press conference. If he has something he wants to say, he's going to say it. And I just think that makes this, I'm actually genuinely excited, I guess would be the word. Maybe that's too much. I don't really get that excited about press conferences, but I'm really interested in this. Like, I'm fascinated to see what Todd is going to say. Like, what if he comes out and says, you know what, Mary Kay, I don't want to do a quarterback competition. I don't think a quarterback competition is good for anybody. We're going to have our starter named by the end of May.
He might say that. The thing about Todd Monken is that he shoots from the hip, and sometimes he is a loose cannon and he will just let it rip. And I think that's what we're going to get from him. And I think it will be a refreshing change of pace, not only for us, but for Browns fans. Because Kevin, when he wanted to turn on the charm, he could do it. He can be a great quote. I can see him in media someday because he's really, really good at it. But he never gave it up. He never gave us what we were looking for, what we wanted, or really any kind of a headlines or anything to really chew on in his press conferences. And I think fans actually kind of got frustrated with that. And I know we all wish that he would have been more forthcoming. So I, for one, am looking forward to just hearing Todd tell it like it is on some things and just kind of speak his mind a little bit. And he might have to pivot and adjust as he goes along because he might realize that, oh, headlines get made out of the smallest things. But I think that he will be very honest, very forthcoming, and I think he's going to give us some things to write.
Yeah, and just what will he say about the receiving core? And I think what's interesting now is we've seen he's had time to sit down and watch this film, and maybe he's had a chance to talk to some of these guys and kind of get to know this roster and this team a little bit better. He's got his coordinators in place, so I want to see what maybe he has to say about some of those guys. I mean, to Mary Kay's point, Ashley, we were watching Kevin Stefanski's press conference today, and somebody asked him, "What does your offense look like?" And he said, well, it's not my offense. It's the Atlanta Falcons offense. And it was like right there on the bingo. If we would have done a Kevin bingo card, it's a Cleveland Browns offense, not my offense. So that it was very classic Kevin and a lot of what he said today. But tomorrow when Todd Monken talks, or today, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's going to be Freddie Kitchens unhinged, but I really do think if he has a message he wants to deliver, he's 60 years old. This is his one shot. He's going to deliver it.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this is going to go. And to your point, Dan, like, yes, it's the first time I'm curious in didn't cover all 6 years of Kevin, but in 5 combines, it's my first time in 5 combines where I'm like, how is this like sidebar, especially when it's just a smaller group of us, going to go, and how is Todd Monken going to handle that? And yeah, like Mary Kay said, that Jim Schwartz quote, the I'm not blocking for Jim Schwartz, and that message, that's been sticking with me, I think, since his intro presser, because that's a prime example. I think loose cannon at times is a good way to describe him from everything we know about him. And it'll be interesting to see how some of these questions are handled tomorrow versus maybe how Andrew handled similar lines of questioning today.
Yeah, and I think the whole quarterback competition thing is fascinating because, again, maybe Andrew doesn't care. But I just wonder when the last time Todd has had a quarterback competition. I don't know if he had one at Georgia at any point. I think they were pretty stable there when he was there. Certainly, in Tampa, he took over and it was Jameis's show for the most part. And he arrives in Baltimore and Lamar Jackson's the quarterback. I've got to imagine, Mary Kay, he understands the value of having a young offense and having the most important position as stable as it can be, as early as it can be.
Yeah, I wonder how he is going to feel about that and the input that he's going to get from others on that. And it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out because, again, what Andrew might want to happen in that regard might be a little bit different than what Todd might want, and he might want to know who his starter is on day one of training camp, so that they can give him all of the first team reps and make sure that they are a well-oiled machine by the time they get to opening day.
Ashley, what's the biggest thing you want to hear from Todd Monken? Like, what's the topic you want to hear from with Todd Monken?
I'm curious because we've already obviously talked about quarterback. We've talked about, Dan, you mentioned the receivers. Like, I think the pass catchers are interesting. But I'm curious to see how he talks about this O-line as well, because I think that is the part of the offense that you're looking at potential significant overhaul. I think Andrew Berry left a lot of things open today in terms of, how guys are rehabbing from injuries in the cases of like DeJuan Jones, Luke Whippler, Ethan Posick. And I mean, it sounds like for the most part, everybody's on track. We didn't get any real details about that. But I'm curious. And the quarterback and that O line and the working together and quarterback mobility are all so intertwined. But Todd Monken obviously knows, I think, how important that mobility is, and obviously how important it is to protect that guy if you are going to have him be super mobile.
Yeah, so he referenced the Chicago Bears today and sort of how they rebuilt their offensive line last year. And that was such a priority for them with a young quarterback, a new coach, a new play caller, really making sure that offensive line was sound. So they made trades, they drafted, they did all that stuff. And it's one of the things I keep coming back to. We don't know exactly how many places they're going to have to replace. But it feels to me, Mary Kay, like this is something that, yeah, they're probably going to draft a guy, and they very well could draft a guy at number 6. I also think they're going to sign a guy. They could trade for a guy. I think this line, whether we're talking starters, backups, just across the board, this line is going to be addressed at all levels of the offseason.
Right. And remember that Andrew Berry acknowledged today, and I wrote this earlier today, that they are going to be exploring trades down from number 6. So if you pick up a couple of other assets, even in this draft, a few higher picks in this draft, or maybe next year, they are going to be looking to do that. And I think that increases the likelihood that you're going to draft multiple offensive linemen with your 10 picks, 11 picks, or whatever you end up with. So I do think that that is such a high priority. And I think they hope that if they do feel good enough about Deshaun and Shedeur, that they can spend those resources elsewhere and not have to spend them on a quarterback. So very interesting to see where they're going with this. But if Joel comes back, I think that will help them. If they feel like Ethan Posick is ready to play after coming off of a ruptured Achilles, if he's ready to go at least early on in the season, I think that they can feel pretty good about him, re-signing him. So lots of different ways they can go. I'm sure that they want to make sure that Zach Zinter is getting his opportunity, a former second-round pick of the Cleveland Browns. They want to make sure that he's having his chance to go out there and make his mark on this football team. So they'll attack it from a number of different angles.
Yeah, and like I'm sure they still want to see what DeJuan Jones can do, right? Now, does that mean they want to hand him the job like they did last year? Probably not, but I'm sure they still want to see what he can do as well. So there is a balance there. And I do kind of keep coming back to 2020 when they went out and they signed Jack Conklin and then they drafted their left tackle. And I feel like it's not going to be an apples to apples offseason, but I feel like they will address, and a lot of this depends on what Joel does, obviously, but I feel like they will address 1 to 2 spots in free agency and not just leave it all up to the draft, not just leave it all up to young people. I could be wrong. Maybe Andrew's looking at this like, let's get 2 new tackles in the draft, have them for however many years on rookie deals, and, let's go. But I could see them sort of double dipping in free agency in the draft at a number of positions.
Yeah, like it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, I've already seen mock drafts that have mocked them 2 tackles in the first round. And we were talking today, look, the Lions now potentially maybe out of the tackle race in that first round as well. So that's potentially opened some things up, and it'll be interesting to see what they do because, like we said, he got up there today. He didn't rule out like this possibility of, like certain number of rookies would be too many for them. But the comparing the rebuild to what the Bears did, I think was interesting. I think it was at least a little illuminating for ideally how you want this to look.
So let's get into a couple of quick hit things here before we go. Let's start with Martin Emerson. That was one that, so we go back to when he initially gets hurt, and really that day he spoke to us that day, and he had talked about, kind of rededicating himself and his, changing his body. He's wearing a new jersey number, all this stuff. Then he goes and ruptures his Achilles. He's gone for the year. And it felt like at the time maybe there was a path where he could sign a 1-year deal, play really well, and then get paid a year later. Well, things change when you go out and you trade for a guy like Tyson Campbell, because now you have your 2 starting outside corners. And so now you've got to figure out how Martin Emerson fits into that. You've got to figure out how draft picks fit into that. Even though, Tyson Campbell isn't super pricey, he is still a veteran who's been signed to a second contract. He's not a guy on a rookie deal. So you have 2 cornerbacks who have been paid already. So it was interesting today, Mary Kay, that Andrew, he sort of made it sound like there's a chance Martin might not be back. He didn't just come out and say it, and he didn't rule him out that he would come back. But I thought it was interesting that he certainly left that door open, that, hey, it just might not happen with Martin Emerson.
Well, I think, when he initially ruptured the Achilles and you knew that he was heading into the final year of his contract, you had to wonder, even in that moment, will he ever be able to come back and play for this team again? Do you re sign a player who's coming off of a ruptured Achilles when you have to sign him to a new contract? So once again, maybe there's a way to restructure it and redo this where they bring him back on a 1-year deal or something like that. Maybe they wait a little bit more into the process to see how that's going to go, see how he is from a health standpoint. And it really comes down to that. How healthy is he going to be? And then you weigh that against the cost of re-signing him. So I don't think that they're counting on him to play a key role for him in 2026, but they're also not ruling him out.
Yeah, and I just think, again, there was an opportunity presented to them with Tyson Campbell, and to go out and get a guy who was a better scheme fit than Greg Newsome, get a guy they probably liked him in the draft. We know Andrew loves to revisit guys in drafts, so maybe they really loved him in that draft when they ended up taking Newsome. And it's just that opportunity came up, and that changed the math of the roster. All of a sudden, now it was a lot harder to justify bringing Martin Emerson back, on top of trying to do that coming off of a ruptured Achilles. So you don't even know when he's going to be ready, what he's going to look like when he comes back. So it's just sort of an unfortunate reality of NFL roster building that maybe Martin Emerson falls victim to this opportunity that was presented on top of the injury.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just life in the NFL too, right? And I think the other issue, as we're talking about, they have their 2 starting outside corners. Like, Martin Emerson hasn't played a ton of slot for them. I don't know that you want him playing a ton of slot corner for you either. Like, he could have the opportunity. There could be a team that is willing to take a chance on a guy coming off an Achilles and make him a starting outside corner, or try to bank on that at least, and just give him, price you out of it basically, because you already have these 2 outside guys that you're paying really well. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate the timing of the injury and everything that happened with, would they have made that trade if Martin was still there and playing well? Like, I don't know. And maybe they wouldn't have extended Greg either, or they would have traded him for something else or someone else. But it's a really interesting thing to think back on, and that injury. And, I think it doesn't help that in 2024, when everyone was struggling, like it felt like Martin took that step back. And Andrew Berry's the first to say progression is not linear. We know that, but I think it could just be a harsh sort of reality here for him.
And then, of course, something we talked about on the HMK pod, but Andrew, on record today, mentioned JOK. They said they're pretty much month to month with him, but he's not feeling very optimistic about it. Without him just coming out and saying, yeah, he's done, that's about as close as Andrew's going to get to saying, yeah, we don't think he's going to play again.
Right. And I reported that pretty much the other day, that it was doubtful at best that he will make it back to the football field. And I thought Andrew kind of confirmed that today with what he said, saying that he's just not optimistic about that happening. So once again, very unfortunate about JOK. I think everybody would have loved to have seen JOK paired with Carson Schlesinger. Every time I put out the call for Hey Mary Kay questions, or anytime we do that with our texters or on Twitter or whatever, the majority of the questions are about JOK. I mean, even more so lately than Shedeur or anyone. It's JOK. And people loved him, and certainly Browns fans did, and the Browns loved him. And, they still do. He's still part of the organization. He's one that will always be a Brown for life as well. But it looks like his contributions will be heretofore not on the field.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like I said, we talked about it on Monday. Ashley, you weren't on that pod, so just your thoughts here on JOK, who I think was on his way to reaching a level we don't see a lot of linebackers reach. I think he had a chance to at some point put himself in the defensive player of the year discussion. He was going to be an all-pro for a long time with the way he was playing. Like what we lost as football fans watching JOK, what the Browns lose as a player, it's just too bad. We're not going to get to see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, we all really, I think, have enjoyed watching him since his rookie year. We've all thought very highly of his skill on the field. For me, a lot of it goes back to the big takeout I wrote on him as a rookie and just learning about how he operated. And really, I think that was like my first glimpse into how much he cared about things outside of football, right? And I think while it's like unfortunate from everything we know in dealing with him and everything we've witnessed, even as he's been away from the team and his social media and stuff like that. If this is in fact like the end for him and we're not going to see him play again, like I'm sure he is a guy who has a lot of different ways of handling that and figuring that out and views himself already as more than a football player. So I think that's very helpful. But yeah, I mean, after like he had a really good rookie year. And then by year 3, it just felt like the lights were really coming on for him in a way that he was just able to fly all around the field. He wasn't overthinking things. And I think, too, for fans and why it's become such a popular question is fans also now really love Carson Schlesinger and have had this vision of what could this look like with Carson and JOK out there. And I think it would be so formidable. So just unfortunate all around if this pans out how it sounds like it's going to pan out.
Okay, day 1 of the NFL Combine is in the books here. We'll be here all week. We'll have daily Orange and Brown Talk podcast, daily stand-ups, of course, stories all day long at cleveland.com/Browns. So make sure you just find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Any social you have, search for Orange and Brown Talk and give us a follow. And of course, check everything out at cleveland.com/Browns. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.